preacher was very loud. Sound system on full blast. Church was full. At least 30 people were there. I'm kneeling down right about here. I'm kneeling. I was facing this direction. I remember. I had my arms lifted up in worship, just as I do every meeting. Every meeting, every day. Worship, 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 worship. If it's 3 times a day, I'll be there worshiping, worshiping, worshiping. I won't go out. I'll worship, 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 because He's worthy of my offering. And I might not have a spectacular life. I might not have any special gift, but worship, worship, worship I have. Worship, worship, worship I have. Whether I feel power and electricity or I don't feel anything, I worship, I worship, I worship, because He's worthy. He's worthy. He's worthy. So there I was. I'll never forget it. I was on a 5th day of a fast, and I was worshiping God, and I just had my arms lifted up, and suddenly I couldn't hear the piano. I couldn't hear the one on the left. I couldn't hear the one on the right. I couldn't hear the preacher. I couldn't hear the tambourine. All I could do was experience the love and power of God. Do you know what? He came with a light, this amazing white, brilliant light, and I'm there and I'm just immersed, totally, completely immersed in this light. And my arms are up, frozen up before the Lord, and I cannot even hear anything going on. And for the first time in my life, the only time in my entire life as a Christian, I heard the audible, external voice of God. He called me like He's calling you. He called me like He's calling you. He called me like He's calling you. He said I was called to be a minister and a missionary. He said I was called to go to Africa, to go to Asia, and to go to England. He called me like He's calling you. And I yielded myself, everything within me. He kissed my left hand. Jesus. Oil ran down my arm. Jesus. And He said, you're to be married to me. Every one of us is called to marry Jesus. Every one of us is called to live in intimate love with Jesus. Nobody's ever called to live as an orphan. Nobody's ever called to be abandoned. Nobody's ever called to feel unloved. Nobody's ever called to be outside. We're called to live in the holy secret place where we're abandoned to the one we love. The pastor was way in the back when I came up out of this vision. He was waiting for me. We called him Brother Roark. He said, you've just had an experience with God. I collapsed on the floor. I began to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. Why was I laughing? Because I was so happy. How could it be that God, who created the universe, how could it be that God, who created this world, God who created this world, God could actually want to use me? How could that be? It absolutely undid me. I was in such awe of a God that would want to use me, a God who would call me. I was thinking, but God, I'm a woman. woman. And I just fell down and I started laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And Brother Roark said, "You've had such an experience with God." And I got back to the Indian reservation and I couldn't speak in English. I just went, I spoke in tongues for 3 days, unable to speak in English. I heard God tell me to preach the gospel. And so I went out to the street and I started, and then I'd interpret for myself. I started preaching at the age of 16. Nobody invited me into their church. I didn't know you needed an invitation to a church to be a preacher. I just started preaching the gospel. I've never stopped. I've been preaching now for 37 years. And I'm in love with Jesus. And He is my passion. And I'm married to the same husband. And that's amazing. Because God called us to live in a laid down life of holy love. I'm going to ask you to stand with me. If I tell you about us.